This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and I am joined today by Alex Newman. Alex, always so good to see you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Duke.
Well, we're going to talk about today a couple stories out of California, because as we know, what happens in California eventually happens here and across the country. And we talked about this. I actually talked about this story a few months ago. And when they were contemplating this, now it has happened, and this is very, very dangerous. The state of California the Assembly has passed a bill that is going to require judges involved in child custody cases, to consider whether or not a parent has supported that child's perceived gender transition by making gender affirmation an integral part of a child's health, safety, and welfare. So in California, what has passed the state legislature, it has not yet gone to Newsom, but you and I both know how Newsom's going to handle this. Basically, in California now, if you fail to do what your children demand vis-a-vis gender-affirming care, and we're talking kids at any level, if you don't give them what they want, if your children aren't happy with how you've treated them in their new non-binary realities, you can lose those kids, especially in custody cases. Husband and wife divorce, whoever demonstrates that they are more woke about their kid's gender is going to get that child.
Yeah, and Duke, this is even more horrific than that, if you can imagine it. We have been warning about this, you and I both, right here on this program and in our articles at Freedom Media for years. Everybody should have seen the writing on the wall. Where this is going is, if you don't affirm your child's gender, period, they are going to consider you an abuser, and they are going to treat you like a threat to your children. Again, we've been warning about this in very clear language right here on this program for years. We're watching it happen. And so, yes, this involves, custody disputes when mom and dad are separating, things like that. That's horrible enough. But what's going to happen here is, when a school says to the Department of Children or Families, whatever they call it in California, hey, this child doesn't live in a safe space, this child's parents are not affirming his or her gender delusions, they will send the child welfare people there, and they will use that in an argument to remove custody from these parents. So make no mistake, folks, this isn't just about moms and dads getting divorced and the most woke parent getting the child. This will tear apart innocent families because mom and dad won't go along with the wokeness. And all I have to say is, hey, we should apply this to anorexia and bulimia then, to be consistent. If a child falsely believes that he or she is obese, why not require the parents to affirm this obesity if we're going to just be into allowing children to identify however they want and determine their own reality? It's bonkers. And everybody should be able to see that.
Well, why not let kids vote? Why not let kids demand to get tattoos? Why not? Hey, I know how much Newsom hates cigarettes. What if a 12-year-old demands his right to smoke a cigarette? I'm pretty sure
he identifies as 22, dude.
Absolutely. And as a Marine, let him smoke, right? No. Right. We have a video here from Lori Wilson, who is one of these Democrat legislators who pushed this through. Take a listen.
Know that parents affirm their children. They have since the dawn of time. Typically, it happens when their gender identity expression matches their biological gender. But what happens is, when it doesn't, that's when the affirmation starts to wane, and that's what we're dealing with here. Although it's called the TGI bill, they're not mentioned anywhere in the law. What's mentioned in the law is the child's gender identity and expression, and the parent's affirmation of that, whatever it is, because that is our duty as parents, to affirm our children.
Your duty, ma'am, if that's what you identify as, Baldy. I mean, she looks a lot like me and you than she does a woman. Are you actually telling me that the duty of parents is to simply affirm what kids tell you? And that's gone on for thousands of years. Are you kidding me? This is what happens when kids go to public school in California. Not only are you completely confused about the nature of gender and sex, but you don't know the first thing about history.
Yeah. And think about the logical implications of this. And imagine parents for thousands of years affirming whatever delusional or creative idea their children come up with. Mom, Dad, I'm Superman. Oh, whoa, okay, here's your cape. Mom, Dad, I'm a pirate. Mom, Dad, I am a policeman, right? I mean, the children have creative imaginations. Children can be duped into believing all kinds of silly things. The job of parents is not to affirm silly things, right? It's not, oh, you are really Superman. Go jump off the roof and it'll be super fun. We'll watch, right? It's absolutely crazy. The job of parents is to say, no, look, honey, I know you want to be Superman, but you're not really Superman. You can't actually fly. Jumping off that building would be deadly, and so please don't do it, right? That's the job of parents, is to keep their children grounded to reality, keep them from making stupid, irreversible decisions like sterilizing themselves, mutilating their genitals, removing their breasts. That is the job of parents. That is what sensible parents have done for thousands of years.
I would really love to see or hear from this particular representative what cultures in history simply accede to whatever their children say. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. What saner cultures have done is realize that children are children and pay no attention to what they think they are or pretend to be or act like they want to be. When your 5-year-old tells you he wants to be an astronaut, we don't immediately pull him out of school and take him to a facility where he can be weightless, right, to be prepared to be an astronaut in 15 years. We don't do that. We let kids get an education, grow up, mature. We let their brains mature, and then we figure out what they want to be. This is completely undermining everything. We have one graph of the vote itself. Take a look at how this vote went in California. 57 to 16 to take away the rights of parents for young children to determine what will be done with them. This is unbelievable in California. And then we also have Elon Musk. He has a child now who has been brainwashed into this cult by the public schools, the schools that the child went to. And here's what Musk says: this must be stopped. A lot of families and companies will leave the state to avoid risking their children being sterilized by the government. And with all due respect to Elon Musk, is it true, Alex? I mean, a lot of parents should be running for the exits. Are they going to in California?
That's a good question. I can tell you I have met a lot of California refugees. Every time I go to Idaho, there are more and more refugees from California. Every time I go to Texas, there are more and more refugees from California, including a lot of folks from the tech sector. In fact, here in Florida, Duke, I have met an increasing number. In fact, I have some in my own family who have fled the People's Republic of Fruits and Nuts for the freer shores of Florida, including liberals, by the way. And I am not kidding at all. There are liberals who love big taxes, who love big government, who are saying, nope, this is just too far, out of here. California's going to lose a lot of money over this, and the bleeding is not going to stop until the madness stops.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you and I have been talking for years, and we've been telling parents, all the reasons why you get their kids out of the public schools and how you've got to run away from states like California that are giving you no options and taking away your rights. So far, the numbers leaving have not slowed down California's nonsense. And I think the one thing that could slow it down is if parents were to leave. But again, not to be too harsh on parents. I mean, picking up everything you have and relocating, trying to quit your job and find another one in a different state. It's not easy. But on the other hand, you have the future of your child's very life. What kind of life they will lead. What kind of memories, experiences, mutilations they might experience before they're even old enough to realize what they have chosen. This is really a matter of life and death, isn't it, Alex? About you can't, if you're not a progressive, you can't leave your kids in these schools.
Yeah, even if you are a progressive, I've said this for so long. Even progressives who may have the woke mind virus, they still want their children to learn how to read. They still want their children to know how to do basic math, right? Even progressives tend to love their children, whether they do it the appropriate way or not. And at this point, I don't think anybody can justify sending their children to school unless they want their children dumbed down, sexualized, indoctrinated, and turned into, basically a disabled, radicalized revolutionary with very little grounding to reality. It's just that dangerous.
And what we're seeing, Alex, is that the detransitioning kids, the Chloes of the world, the ones that are speaking out about what was done to them, The left is not paying any attention to them. In fact, the left is going after them. They're treating them like they're treating Riley Gaines. This person is a liar, a fraud. This person hates the LGBTQ. These are kids who've been mutilated and sterilized, now telling you that they were too young to do it, that they were being pushed into it by their schools, by their parents, and they've done it now. And they regret it, and we will not listen to them. So that tells you how extreme this is. We're going to take a very short break, come back. We've got another story from California, equally annoying. We have another story from California, Alex, and this is pretty stunning. We now have in California a bill that is working its way through that will prohibit, this is unbelievable, school districts from restricting books on LGBTQ and race issues. So all of this stuff, the pornography, the radical sex, the shockingly inappropriate pedophilia in some of the books, now, because what California is saying is that this radical sex is what it means to be LGBTQ. I've complained about this for years. Why do the left get away with this? When they think of gay or trans or bi-curious kids, they always associate those kids with radical forms of sexuality, vile, dirty, disgusting, and physically dangerous forms of sex. That is apparently, according to the progressives in California, that comes with the territory. If you're gay, then you're going to participate in dangerous forms of sex. So now, while they're telling you got to affirm your kids, we're also telling these kids, and we're telling the state and parents, hey, you can't take books out of the public school libraries because all that pedophilia, all that radical sex, that incest that's being talked about in these books, that's how trans and gay kids identify. So if you remove those books, you are behaving inhumanely with these kinds of kids. The illogic of this is so frustrating, Alex.
Yeah, and they're not actually going to enforce this, right? Let's say we want to put some books in about Sodom and Gomorrah. Let's say we want to put some books in just detailing the health consequences of homosexual sex, right? On average, these people are dying 15, 20 years earlier than heterosexual, normally married people. What if we wanted to put books that explain those things? Well, you don't want to ban books. They're about LGBT. Well, no, see, so this is a fraud. It's always a fraud. What they mean is not you can't ban books dealing with LGBT. What they mean is you can't ban books promoting LGBT. You can't ban books promoting confusion and perversion. You can ban books that go contrary to our narrative on any of these issues, including books that expose CRT. And I keep saying, all this whining about the book bannings and the book burners. Conservatives don't want to let our children read books. Say, well, good. Let's flood the library with Bibles. Let's flood the library with good, wholesome Christian books. Oh no, that would be a violation of the separation of church and state. See, so they're never actually arguing for what they claim to be arguing for. Otherwise, we could bring some of our own books in, but they would have a heart attack.
The problem is that we can't flood the school libraries with anything because public people like you and I who pay these taxes for these public schools, we have no access. It's these radicalized library associations who funnel these books into the public schools. And you and I both know who's in charge of the main librarian association in this country for public schools. That's the radical communist who is pushing this. And she basically says what, Alex? That the place for communist revolution is in the public schools and public libraries. And you made a good point. You made a good point. You don't even have to necessarily go to biblical stuff. What if we were to demand that trans kids, the ones who are detransitioning, the ones who had it done to them and now regret it, what if we put their biographies in the schools? Do you think the public schools would allow that in California? No way. Only books that affirm. None, even from survivors and victims of this ideology, those biographies would not be in those classes either.
That's right. And, I'm glad you brought up the head of the American Library Association. That was my story this week for the Newman Report. You can see it behind me. This is a lady who describes herself as a lesbian Marxist. Back in 2009, she revealed that it was a book that she read in the library when she was 14 years old about fantastic queer sex in a field that caused her to start identifying as a lesbian. So she is openly working, she says, in her words, to subvert the family. She believes that public schools or government indoctrination centers and taxpayer-funded libraries need to be centers for socialist organizing. And so when you called her a communist, Duke, I'm sure a lot of people are, oh, well, that's just Duke being inflammatory. No. She describes herself as a lesbian Marxist. That's her terminology. So, at this point, Duke, and I have used the library over the years. I'm ready to just shut them down because they are discriminating blatantly. Right? How many libraries have denied Kirk Cameron access because he wanted to read wholesome children's stories to children? Many, right? And it's under the leadership of this lesbian Marxist. So thankfully, some of the state associations are dropping out, but it's way past time the taxpayers say, we're not funding this. We're not funding revolution against our families, against our country with our tax dollars. In fact, we used to say revolutionaries were subversive and needed to be investigated if they were advocating the overthrow of our system of government. It's exactly what these people are doing, and yet now they're doing it with our tax money. It's obscene, and it needs to stop.
Well, we have this from Gavin Newsom, the so-called governor of the state of California. California, he says, California is the true freedom state, a place where families, not political fanatics, have the freedom to decide what's right for them. Really? Really? Based on the story we just did, families are free to decide. They have the freedom to decide what's right for them. With the passage of this legislation that bans book bans and ensures all students have textbooks, our state's family agenda is now even stronger. All students deserve the freedom to read and learn about the truth, the world, and themselves. Banning book bans that don't exist, Alex, and the family agenda here. And by the way, books like Genderqueer and Lawn Boy, these pedophilic they're not textbooks. They're pulp fiction written by radical homosexual advocates. Unbelievable. They're the freedom state, Alex.
Yeah, and they mean freedom in the absolute worst sense, right? Freedom with no restraint for morality. Freedom like French Revolution style freedom, where we try to abolish God, we try to abolish morality, and we end up with an orgy of violence and blood running through the streets and tens of thousands of beheadings. The French revolutionaries, mass murdering maniacs, they ran around with the same thing, with liberty, equality, fraternity. I mean, these are exactly the same as the revolutionaries in California. They just haven't finished destroying the foundation to the point yet where they can run around beheading their political enemies. But make no mistake, the same evil fanaticism, the same evil ideology that motivated the conspirators behind the French Revolution is the same madness that's motivating these revolutionaries in California.
Yeah, I call the Californians surf Jacobins because that's pretty much what they are. We also have a video here that I want you to take a quick look at and get a sense of this.
California lawmakers sent a proposed law to Governor Gavin Newsom's desk that prohibits California public schools from banning books based on gender and race. The California Assembly finalized the vote 55-15 on a party line vote. This bill would go into effect immediately with the governor's signature, and Newsom has already signaled this is something he would support. Debate on the bill was lengthy.
We will be on the right side of history, so be proud of this yes vote. Because anytime they continue to try to find ways to anger people and create boogeymen, we will be back here again to deal with that too.
And this bill is just another example of Sacramento stepping in and telling local school districts what they can and cannot do.
Yeah, and you know what? How many times have we heard from California lawmakers, including Gavin Newsom, when they want to have bathrooms for boys and girls and one showers? Well, these are as long as the school chooses them, that's a local control issue, right? When they want to bring in gay this and trans that, they have every right they have as local school districts to do that. But when local school districts try to reject Common Core or get rid of some of these explicit books, notice what happens. There is no local control. You don't have the right. As long as you side with progressives, you can do whatever you want in your local school district. And the minute you don't, we will pass laws like that one clown just said. The next time you try to tell us what you're going to do as a local school district, we'll come after you for that.
Yeah. And this is what I've been saying for so many years, Duke. I know there's so many millions of well-intentioned Americans who are really working their heinies off to get decent people elected to school boards. And I've been saying for years, fine, do that if you must, but that is not going to work, right? And we've seen this over and over again. One of the guys who serves on the advisory board of public school exit with us, Steve Baldwin, he was the last conservative chairman of the education committee in the California Assembly, in the legislature there. And after he left, he started an operation to recruit conservative Christian school board members. They took over a whole bunch of school boards across California. They got dozens and dozens of their people elected. What happened? Litigation, the state, the feds, and the courts stopped every ounce of positive reform. And so that's what happens. This is a hydra here. Right? And people say, oh, if we just take over the local school board, we'll be fine. No, right? You can cut off a tentacle of the machine, and guess what? All the other tentacles will continue to devour children until the previous tentacle grows back. It's just, it's hopeless. The system is corrupt beyond repair. And so, if you want to get involved in the school board, God bless you. But anybody who thinks they're going to be able to save this by taking over a school board or even taking over a state school board, I know state school board members, and you do as well, Duke, all across the country, and I hear from them regularly. This is so frustrating. We can't do anything. That's because the system is designed to do what it's doing. It's not broken. You can't fix it. It's working very well from the perspective of the totalitarians.
Yeah, this is the problem you and I have. We do a lot of talks across the country and the states that we live in. We are in front of audiences who are concerned about this all the time. And it is heartbreaking to look them in the eye because they want to know, what do we do? And when inevitably what they're trying to do is take over their local school boards. And I don't know how to handle this because you don't want to discourage that. Go ahead and do it. But I phrase it this way, Alex. If you control the school board in states that are relatively conservative, forget the liberal states. Nothing's going to come from that, right? In California, as you just mentioned, doesn't matter how many school boards you take over, they're going to take you to court. But in states that are moderately or conservative states, even if you take it over, you're playing whack-a-mole. All you can do as a school board member is if someone in your district brings a bad book to you and says it's in the library, you might be able to remove it, but you can't then control what's coming in, right? You can't control what the librarians are bringing in. So you're playing whack-a-mole, and that's only as good as you have parents who come to you. Other than that, what can you do? So I know what you're going to say. I'm going to say it too. We have reached the point where you cannot do anything but pull your kids out. There is no place, no way, no how that you can fix this. So some of what's going on here with the people we talk to is it's they want to do everything they can do to help your kids, except take them out. The bell has rung. You now know if you don't take them out, this is a you problem now. It's not a they problem anymore.
Exactly right, Duke. And time is short, folks. When you tell me you can't afford to take your children out of public school, you can't afford not to. The consequences will haunt you for the rest of your life. This is your legacy. This is your heritage. And you're frittering it away by sending your kids off to be sacrificed at these indoctrination centers.
And you're not just destroying your kids. You are contributing to the destruction of America because these kids are historically, religiously, humanly ignorant. You are creating kids who will vote for what you don't stand for. And that's going to wrap up the show. If you enjoy the program, please subscribe to our brand new podcast channel. Simply visit drdukeshow.com and search Dr. Duke Show on your favorite platform, free of charge, and leave us a 5-star review, please. For all of us, the Dr. Duke Show, and for Alex Newman, thanks, and we'll see you next time.